Welcome to the first of hopefully many episodes of Uncomfortable Conversations with the Black Man. In the midst of all this chaos in our world, so many of y'all have reached out to me, and by y'all, I mean white people, have reached out to me asking, how can I help? How can I join in? How can I stand with you? So I've created this.
Hi, everyone. How are y'all? Happy Wednesday. Today, we are going to be talking about we, the Black immigrants, and about one Black immigrant specifically, which is Emmanuel Acho. All right, so let's get into it. Let me pull up our agenda. I tried something new, so hopefully the tech worked and the little clip played. Let me know if y'all saw the clip. Yes. I saw that y'all noticed that we are not on time, which I have now just realized my earrings aren't even in my ear. Let me put these in and let's go through our agenda. So a few housekeeping and updates. Then we'll get into the commotion that started this conversation. And this has been an ongoing conversation, to be honest. We have had versions of this conversation on this channel, on the Patreon, on Instagram numerous times. But we can never have the conversation enough because the issue is still going on. So until it gets eradicated, I'm happy for us to have this conversation. We're going to talk about Emmanuel versus Van versus Emmanuel, and the issues. And then what happens when you have a Black face and a white audience? Then we'll talk about generational trauma throughout the diaspora. And then we'll end with my favorite thing to sit on my high horse about, which is diversity and inclusion is a scam. And people running this same level of grift outside of corporate are largely grifting and running a scam. And in corporate, I am of the idea now that most people realize that DEI without anti-racism work does not work. So we will get into that. Let me check the audio really quick. Okay, perfect. Now we're good. Ooh, I moved around. Okay, let's get into the updates. How are all of y'all doing on this lovely Wednesday? Hey, Naya. Thank you, Eva. All right, so this conversation, I'm gonna make me small really quick. This conversation piggybacks off of a conversation that we had on Instagram, which got posted to Patreon back in August regarding Jackie Aina and the candles. We had a conversation with my dear friend Grace, who is Nigerian, about the harm that we first-generation immigrants cause both to Black Americans as well as to the countries of our parents' origins, or our origins, depending on how you define first generation. So with that, I think that's a good segue into this conversation, since we are largely talking about the same group. And also I wanted to shout out Grace. Her Instagram and her TikTok is Critical Grace Theory. Highly recommend you follow her. She did a TikTok, which I wanted to play, but it looks like it's not going to let me play it, regarding situation as a Nigerian American woman and why she is personally ashamed. So go give her a follow. She's also a comedian and highly hysterical. All right, so with that, because last time I was too late, so we didn't go through the Patreon tiers, all of the Instagram live streams get saved on Patreon, so that Jackie Aina, that chat about the candles and the commotion with the candles is on the Rose tier, which is the $2 tier, so they're all over there. And then our Patreon only live streams, which are bi-weekly, are under Sauvignon Blanc, the $10 tier. So that is where everything is. All right. So now we're going to get into Emmanuel versus Van. And yes, I've heard my Caribbean family say some things. Child, mine too. Every day it is an argument with them. Every day. Now, this clip is a bit long. It's about 6 minutes. So we are going to break it up into chunks so you can digest the level of foolery that occurred, because we have a lot of clips to play. All right, let's start with this. So for context, Van Lathan has a podcast with Rachel Lindsay, and Rachel Lindsay is a Black lawyer. She most famously was on The Bachelorette, and Emmanuel Acho is her childhood friend. They knew each other when they were teenagers. I can't remember if I cut out that part of the clip, but just for context. And yeah, so let us get into it.
Bruh, like I watch it and the show angers me. Have you ever had anybody else that's had that reaction to it?
Of course.
Of course. I mean, if you want to avoid criticism, say nothing, do nothing, be nothing.
Mm-hmm.
So if I wanted to avoid criticism, I would have to live my life inside my house and keep my mouth shut. So no doubt about it, man. I've had that here at all the time. More often than not, I hear positive feedback. I recall Akbar Abajabi Emil is someone I greatly respect. I'm sure you all have crossed paths with him at some point in time, like, hey, thank you for saying what I did not have the words to say. But truth be honest, truth be told, bro, like the show wasn't for you. And I think I've had to realize, like, the show wasn't for everybody. The show, you're educated, and you're more than educated on what it takes to be a Black man, because you are, in fact, a Black man. You have lived in America as a Black man. You know exactly what that looks like, feels like, sounds like, particularly based on generations. Show wasn't for you. The show was for people who have no idea what it might be like to walk in a Black man and or woman's shoes. Show wasn't for Rachel. Rachel's my dog. Rachel's my sis. I've known Rachel since I was in high school, truth be told, because I used to run track meets in my old high school. Show wasn't for her. And that's no slight. It's just to say that I created this show with the intention of enlightening people's eyes who had their eyes closed.
Rach?
We talked about it on this podcast before. And I remember this was like, man, when we first started. And I remember I even told you, Emmanuel, I was like, listen, I said this Black people don't get it. They don't understand it necessarily. It's not necessarily for us. And I told you that we talked about that on this very podcast. From what I have heard when it comes to criticism about uncomfortable conversations is that Black people feel like you are too accommodating to white people in your conversation. How would you respond to that?
You catch more bees with honey than vinegar. That's how I would respond to that.
But is honey what is necessary? I think is the thing. Because in 2020, we were in a completely different mindset and we were outraged. And so I think the response was negative from Black people, because they didn't feel like you should be handling it with kid gloves or with honey. And it seemed more accommodating to them that you were giving them too much space rather than telling them certain things that we were going through.
I respect that. I think, like we all say, Black people aren't a monolith. So you have my dog, Toby Nwigwe, hip hop artist. That's my dog, Nigerian. And he gonna say a song, try Jesus, don't try me, because I throw hands. He gonna say arrest the killers of Breonna Taylor. He's gonna sing X, Y, and Z. You have Amanda Seales, and Amanda Seales she gonna come at you. Incredibly educated. She gonna come at you. You have Sean King. He's gonna say what he's gonna say. You got Ibram X. Kendi. He's gonna deliver the information incredibly didactically broken down. And you have my approach. And I'm not gonna rap about arresting the killers of Breonna Taylor. And Toby's probably not gonna sit in an all-white room, saying, dear white brothers and sisters. But I'm also not going to undermine what Toby or Amanda or anybody else is going to do. And I would hope they would not undermine me.
Okay, so a few thoughts before we go into the next part of this. Now, anybody still in 2023 quoting Sean King as a reputable source along with other reputable Black people is a red flag for me. It's a red flag for me. Also, you catch more flies with honey is very interesting verbiage in terms of his whole premise, and which hopefully the intro played for his show, which is white people, you reached out to me and y'all are just so clueless and I'm going to help you. Assumes and gives a lot of grace to collective whiteness in this place that does not need any grace. I think it's really interesting, and we're going to go through some of the clips from his show, which essentially what he does is he drops in one very vague Black American history fact and then says his frou-frou coddling. And in doing so, it assumes that white people do not know anything about white American history, which would be against common knowledge, particularly as somebody, he grew up in Texas, where deep in the South, and also in the North, but is, I would say, more known in the South, it is widely known, and you can see the pictures of it, that many white families disgustingly and unfortunately attended many a lynching, took many a picture, kept many a trophy. What do you mean as if they don't know these things? I find it very, very odd behavior. And also, people only say Black people are not a monolith when they want to go and say some divisive nonsense. Black people are only getting collective freedom together. All of us are going or none of us are going. Or in this case, if you are a grifter that wants to make money, you will go by yourself. Obviously, that's how this works. So let's go to the next part of the clip because I broke it down into 3 parts because it's a lot. All right. And moving on, this part is short. Let me make me small.
Like there's different types of everything in this world. You got different water bottle flavors. You got different types of TVs. You got flat screens. You got plasmas. It's all good.
So now we are electric devices. Yes, comparing actual living people with actual living history to electrical devices. Electrical devices are different, and we, the Negroes, all come in different shades and flavors too. I think it's really interesting when people say, oh, but I don't want to be divisive and people shouldn't be divisive with me because we need to all stand in solidarity at all times and don't call each other out because collective whiteness wants us to fight with each other. No, but we want to fight with you because this is nonsense. This is foolishness. And hiding under the guise and a lot of, I would say, I wouldn't particularly categorize Emmanuel Acho as a full-on conservative grifter. In my opinion, Emmanuel Acho is a brand of diversity and inclusion grift, which we'll get into specifically. It is an easy grift. All you do is memorize the vocabulary words, and there you go. That is the type of grift that I would categorize him as, and particularly saying, oh, and knowing that Black people overwhelmingly do not like to outwardly criticize each other because it is well known that, yes, of course, collective whiteness wants to see Black people fighting. But you know what? To hell with that. Because some people need to be reamed out. Some people need to be reamed out and reamed out appropriately and accordingly and in due time, because that's the only way that certain people learn that this is not appropriate behavior, particularly if said people are speaking on behalf of all of us in this place. Okay, and then to the last clip, which is going to be about like 3
Like there's
minutes.
different types of.
Hold on. Yes, we know you think we're television. Hold on. Okay, here we go. Let me make him bigger and me small.
Sis, you don't have to like it. Not literally y'all, but the proverbial bro and sis I'm speaking to is like, bro, it's all love. Like, I don't necessarily agree with what so many of these other people are doing. I'm like, you know, what's that doing? How's that moving the needle? But I know people don't agree with me, but what I'm not going to do is publicly undermine them, because then now it looks like we fighting against each other.
Sorry, I spoke too soon. This is the part where he's talking about publicly undermining people. If you're giving a harmful message, you need to be undermined.
Which is what people want to see from us in the first place. It's Black people fighting Black people. Go ahead, man.
We'll get to that in a second. When you said your method, what is your method?
My method is this. I believe that if you really want to understand something, you have to immerse yourself in the culture. Mm-hmm. I grew up Nigerian American. What that means is I have the privilege of knowing where my parents came from. I go back to my village in Nigeria. Okay, I'm track with me because I'm going somewhere with it. But I went to a private school, majority white, in Dallas. But then I went to church in the hood. Rachel can attest to that. Rachel, I think y'all went to Concord. I went to Oak Cliff Bible Fellowship.
Right down the street. Mm-hmm.
No doubt about it. So I grew up with Black people. I grew up with Nigerian people. I grew up with white people. As a result, I know when white people say, well, racism doesn't exist, I know why they say that, because I've been in them rooms when they saying that. Mm-hmm. When I kick it with Black people and they're like, all white people are racist. I know why you're saying that. All the while, I have the privilege and luxury of not having generational trauma because my parents were born in Nigeria. So, man, my method is removing some of the sting because I don't have that sting, and trying to deliver a message in a manner that people can receive it. Primarily white people.
Okay. Let me tell you why what you just said offends me.
Okay.
All right. First of all, there are a couple of things. I grew up South Baton Rouge, Louisiana. All my classmates were white. I was in the gifted program. All of my classmates were white from the beginning. McKinley High School, gifted program, McKinley High, 80% Black school, gifted program, all white, Van's in the class with them. Van's playing basketball and sports and everything else with the black kids. Mama from South Baton Rouge, all of that. I understand the being pulled between two worlds. I understand the having the insight into two worlds. You saying that you don't have generational trauma and you didn't mean it this way, but the reason, and it's, I have to name it, you saying that you don't have any generational trauma in some way meaning, or that in some way meaning that your delivery method to white people is going to be either more effective or more sanitized is, to me, dangerous. And let me tell you why. Everybody that you just named and what you're talking about does what they do in different ways. I don't think that any of the things that they do are necessarily harmful. But what I could say is a black man, a prominent one, acting as an emotional butler for white people and serving them the most milquetoast, unspicy, unseasoned brand of racial discourse and accountability possible could definitely be harmful.
So that read from Van was highly necessary, particularly the milquetoast reference. And there's so much to unpack there, so many problematic things. Let's start in tandem. Emmanuel said he grew up with Black people, Nigerian people, and white people. Nigerians are Black people. I have no idea why in his mind he thought, oh, I wrote an entire book talking about conversations with a Black man, but I am Nigerian, as if that is separate from being a Black man. That is interesting, an interesting observation. And honestly, when I first saw all of this, it irritated the shit out of me for multiple reasons. One, because who gave him the right to have these conversations in the first place? Who decided that he was the head Negro in charge, first and foremost? Second of all, it is highly problematic as a Black immigrant myself when certain parts of Black immigranthood are like, oh, you know what? The Americans, they're adorable. They're sweet. Problematic sometimes. Okay, whatever nonsense your parents tell you. But if we do things the proper way and this way, and we just pull ourselves up by the bootstraps and we believe in this lie of meritocracy in America, we can do all things. No, that's not how this works. That is nonsense. It is a lie. It is foolishness. That is incorrect. And to be honest, we're going to get into his comments about his lack of generational trauma, which is impossible. How are you a Nigerian American that has experienced colonization, that your parents have gone through the Biafra War, that you're Igbo and you don't have no generational trauma? Okay, sir, that's interesting. And I'm going to put this on here. So thank you for the $5. I don't fully agree with this statement, but I don't fully disagree. And part of me, to be very honest, I think these conversations only move the needle forward when we're honest, wanted to leave it alone and wanted to left him and the rest of them to dry, solely because whenever one Black immigrant does something, everybody's flag gets put up. All of us are commotion now. But doing that is not getting to the root of, we are not going to get to a Pan-African dream unless we all learn to get to the root of the problem. So Black Americans, Afro-Caribbeans, Black, French, Brits are all cool with each other. Most of the beef is with the Africans. This is not true. I think there are more Nigerian Americans, particularly we're going to go through a few of the tweets of people that read him for filth, rightfully so, including some of my friends as well. However, the people that do capitalize off of the fact that they are in Black skin but can differentiate themselves from Black American people are very loud. Emmanuel Acho is a prime example of that. Very loud. So it causes this undue attention and it looks like large swaths of people are acting this way when it's not true. When it is just one person who is selling books, making bad YouTube videos, and going on about how white people need him and he needs to be a conduit for white people. So let us get into that. And then also, with that being said, y'all already know this because we talk about it all the time. This space is very much a diaspora space. So everyone be polite to each other, which people usually are. I don't ever have to really say that. So let's just say that out here. And this is a great point, Naya, and we're going to get into this as well, because I think a lot of people are very confused. I've always specified my parents are refugees. I don't know. I don't always feel like I relate to all immigrants. All refugees are immigrants, and not all immigrants are refugees. It is very different to be a refugee and a child of a refugee versus an economic immigrant. Most Black immigrants are economic immigrants, with a few notable exceptions. A lot of Haitians are refugees. Being from Miami, we have a large Haitian population. A lot of Somalis, a lot of Sudanese people, and surprisingly, which is why I'm very surprised that he decided to take this route in his foolishness, when I had the conversation with Grace, who is Nigerian, regarding Jackie Aina and the candle, my assertion was, oh, it's interesting seeing the changing demographics of Black immigrants. Caribbean immigrants largely are economic immigrants, as in we're leaving the Caribbean so we can have a better life. Caribbean has been ravaged by colonization. We come over here very much working class, lower middle class. A little bit of money, not a lot of money. Most Nigerian immigrants that are coming over with much more money than Black immigrants previously have come over with. Sans, a large percentage and population of Igbo immigrants are actually refugees. Grace and her family were Igbo refugees to the US. And I think that's something very interesting in terms of how we don't have full understanding of each other because we often don't have these conversations. So we're going to get into some more uncomfortable conversations with this Black man, and then we'll get into all of it. 1 second. And an interesting fact about Igbo and Patois. So Patois is quote unquote, which the older I get, the more I'm like, is it broken English? I've preferred Patois to other versions of English, but broken English in Jamaica, Patois, a lot of the words actually have the same meaning as they do in Igbo, which is really interesting. Like huno apparently means the same thing. And then Grace and I were talking about that the other day, which I thought was pretty cool. All right, so back to raising your blood pressure with these uncomfortable conversations. So you get a full gist of why Emmanuel Acho deserves all of this ire that he's causing.
Another question I get asked, well, Emmanuel, if I as a white woman want to wear braids, how do I know that I'm not being offensive? What is this concept of cultural appropriation? And I think about two things. In the late 1800s, Jim Crow laws were formed and they disenfranchised Black people. But you want to know where the name Jim Crow came from? It came from a main character in Black minstrel shows, where a white person would paint on Black face and take red lipstick and draw big red lips on their mouth, because full lips, were a distinguishing trait of Black people. And they would take these traits and mimic and mock Black people. And traits that have been used and attributes and parts of Black culture that were once mimicked and mocked and made a fool of are now celebrated when a white person does it. In 2020, in the doctor's office, lip injections, they occur every 20 minutes. Beyond that, plagiarism, it's always been viewed as offensive when we all realize that. So while imitation may be the highest form of flattery, plagiarism, that is problematic. So wearing braids as a white person or borrowing Black culture, that's not the issue. Just make sure you know the history and make sure that you cite your sources.
I bet, Matt, you weren't expecting it to go there. It's going nowhere good. That's where this is going. It's going straight to hell, fiery place, expeditiously. I think the peak comedy of this foolishness is him describing a minstrel show while he himself is performing modern day, essentially minstrelsy. It's fascinating to me. Also, again, because his brand is taking one very specific, vague Black fact that he can find and then tying it in. If you're talking about Black women's hair, why wouldn't you have referenced the Tijuana laws then? About how we had to wrap up our hair and you couldn't have your hair up in this place, and how that has largely led into the conversations around texturism, which are due to colonialism and chattel slavery. That would have been a better fact, I'm just saying. But at least as a Black woman now, if I ever see a white woman ripping out her scalp with braids, I am just not going to be upset and just ask her if she can cite her sources. This is highly problematic behavior. First of all, why are white women emailing him about whether or not they can wear braids? And this is what I find very interesting when we start getting into the analysis of Black people that have majority white audiences, whether it's on YouTube or on any television shows, etc. Sadly, when you have a majority white audience as a Black person and you are giving what is supposed to be some type of guidance on a topic, most of the white people, because now you've already started this whole series by saying, oh, everybody is naive, everybody is practicing unconscious bias, they're unconsciously racist, they don't have a clue in their brain what they're doing. You have told all these people that it is okay, that they're stupid, they are not dumb, foolishness. Now you're telling them it's okay. That one Black man who I don't really know, but I wrote him an email and he read it out loud in his 7-minute YouTube video, which caused so much harm, told me I can wear my braids in my hair, rip out my scalp because it's not designed for my hair texture, but that be damned, I will wear my braids because that one Black man that I don't know told me I could do it. All it is allowing bad behavior to foster and making white people feel better about themselves, which is the root of the problem with his brand of diversity and inclusion, if he wants to call it that. Let us continue. Okay. Don't worry, we don't have too many more clips because it's a little unnerving. And I find all of that interesting because his book, that after he had his YouTube run, which is, the channel is still there, the main series was Uncomfortable Conversations with a Black Man. He then made a book, which again is after he differentiated himself and said, oh, there's Black people, there's Nigerian people, and there are white people. Which is interesting. And I think it should be noted, if we're having an honest conversation, we don't get to a happy, healthy, laughing, everybody eating curry goat, jollof rice, and jambalaya together unless we're honest. This is not the only person of West African descent that I've seen say that. And honestly, as a Jamaican, I have seen Jamaican people say it too. This is foolishness that is passed down through colonization, and particularly when people emigrate. People are not stupid. People emigrate to this country, specifically economic immigrants. If you emigrated as an economic immigrant, the whole goal is for you to have a better life than the life you had before. So if you see that Section A of people is getting treated bad, the first thing in your mind is, how do I not get treated like Section A of people? Okay, well, I'm just going to say that we look the same, but I'm over here. I'm doing a different thing and I'm not like that. And that is nonsense. And historically, it is ahistorical to the fact that part of the civil rights movement, which we'll get into, there were many Caribbean immigrants that helped with the civil rights movement. There have largely been many Caribbean people that have fought for the rights of Black American people and Caribbean people in this place. And largely now, because we have newer immigrants from different places, I don't know what type of history is being taught over there, but we need to rid ourselves of this notion very quickly, very fast, expeditiously, today, yesterday. And no, it's not everybody, but it starts when you have those uncomfortable conversations. A real uncomfortable conversation is saying something back to your family members, particularly the older ones that do wild amounts of anti-Black things. That is a real uncomfortable conversation to say, oh, for example, my family, they're not the best example because half of my family is married to Black American people. But for example, if I were to tell, oh, uncle, I didn't like that you say that as trifling, stop it. That's a real uncomfortable conversation. That's the only way you're going to rid yourself out of this nonsense, because this idea, again, that when you go outside, that you have a flag on your forehead is preposterous. Nobody knows. Nobody knows until you open up your mouth and decide that you want to be some exceptional, special Negro that is different. And you're not that special, truthfully. Truth be told. Okay, so into what happens when you have a Black face and a white audience. Now, after that, rightfully, people got very upset on the Twitter and proceeded to have lots of conversation. So this is a question everyone is trying to figure out. I'm just trying to figure out who made Acho the face and voice for Black Americans. I'm very curious about that. And anybody supporting Emmanuel Acho needs to ask themselves that. Why are you more comfortable with somebody who has said they do not identify with the full plight of Black American people? Why are you more comfortable to listen to them and the way they are delivering their message versus an actual Black American person? That is the question. And that will give anybody that is still supporting this person the answer to your question, which is you don't want to do the work. You don't want to realize that you don't need all these people to coddle you and to tell you these things. All you have to remember is what you learned in kindergarten, which is treat people the way you want to be treated. So I think it's really interesting that the people supporting Emmanuel Acho are Mr. Floribama. Floribama as in probably like Florida-Bama, Florida, like the Florida-Georgia line, like that. So you know what type of person this is. So you're mad because Emmanuel Acho doesn't subscribe to your type of a Black person. This is not a Black person writing this, mind you. Real bold. Or how a Black person should be. He has a voice and a right to his opinion. I found his discourse fruitful and deserving of more than you gave him. You have hate in your heart, it seems. I always think it's really interesting when full-on racist people, when they get cornered or you corner their token person that they frequent. You have hate in your heart. You, the racist, is telling me that I'm hateful? Comical. Comedy is nothing but comedy. And I think this is the last clip, and then we'll get into it, and then I won't trouble you anymore with this foolishness, but this one will make you laugh.
Welcome to another episode of Uncomfortable Conversations with a Black Man. I've read your emails, I've heard you, so I'm going to start this episode a little bit different by reading an email that gave me hope, changed my life, and I promise it'll do the same for you. Lynn wrote, "Dear Emmanuel, I grew up in the 1940s. My family were good people who were unconsciously racist. Negro was a term we used. Racism, like religion, was drummed into me. It's hard every day to choose not to judge, but I'm listening. I'm 73 and I'm still learning. Don't give up on people like me. I'm awake now and determined to wake others up. Bless you, my brother and my son." Well, Lynn, I won't give up on you. And that's why I'm back here in our safe space to have another uncomfortable conversation.
Someone needs to get their Nana expeditiously. Someone needs to get their Nana yesterday. Please come collect your Nana. Why is she writing to this random man on the internet and telling them that her family is unconsciously racist? You cannot be unconsciously racist. I think the most harm diversity and inclusion, which is now a large booming sector, has done is give people the term unconscious bias. I've never heard anyone say unconscious racist. Like, okay, Nana, you've taken it far. Lynn, you've taken it very far, but okay. Unconscious bias is the worst thing that diversity and inclusion has done to people. It is not unconscious when you cross the road because you see a Black person. It is not unconscious when you grab your bag because you're all of a sudden afraid that somebody's trying to steal from your Coach purse, which is not even real, that you got from Chinatown. It is not unconscious when you try to touch Black people's hair, which I find it really interesting. I was looking in, I don't want to call their full community out, but I was looking in the comments being nosy. And another YouTuber posted a picture about a video coming up. And in the video, people are touching a Black Black man's hair. In the comments, there were assumably white people. I can't believe people aren't doing that. People aren't touching Black people's hair. No way. What are you talking about? Every year we have to tell white people, stop touching Black people's hair. Stop doing that. You would never touch a white person. Why are you touching strangers? It's assault. I'm going to call since we're calling the police, I will call the police on you. Actually, I will slap you. Stop the nonsense. And every time you say, oh, shock. What? No adult is doing that. It's gaslighting. It's gaslighting and it's foolishness. And it is propped up by people like Emmanuel Acho that want to play this game of coddling serious issues. It's a serious issue, systemic racism in this country. Chattel slavery, the erasure of Black history in this country is a serious issue and should not be handled by people who want to read letters from Lynn in a quote unquote safe space and literally co-opt words and verbiage from marginalized people. Safe space? The safe space was built for us to hide from people like Lynn. I'm confused. I'm really, really confused. No. And it is also instating and reaffirming a very harmful trope, which is that Black people are here to do labor, emotional labor, mental labor, physical labor for white people. And at 73 years old, I demand you to do this labor for me, and you, random black man on the television, on the YouTube, you are not allowed to give up on me, because I am an unconscious racist and I consciously am choosing to try to do better. And maybe some of you think that's a little bit too harsh to Nana, but you know what? Nana is a good 73. She's lived many a years. She is not stupid. We are doing people a disservice by treating them like they're dumb. Haiti didn't free itself through kumbaya and cuddling the French. That is not how that worked. All right, let's go on.
Welcome.
Now, let me make this bigger so y'all can see the sea of beige. All of Uncomfortable Conversations with a Black Man center white people. As Emmanuel said, his goal is to cater to white people and make sure he can sweeten it with honey so they understand the message, because in his opinion, Black Americans are just a little too hostile for him. Interesting. White Allergies with Matthew McConaughey. Matthew McConaughey, who says questionable things about Black Lives Matter and Black people in general. Interesting. A Conversation with the Police. Uncomfortable Conversations. The police? Really? Okay. Karens and Cancel Culture with Chelsea Handler. Uncomfortable Conversations. The only sensible person, to be honest, in this whole lineup is Chelsea Handler. White Parents Raising Black Children. Uncomfortable Conversations. You mean to tell me that this man wants to talk about transracial adoption in a span of 16 minutes? Okay. National Anthem Protest Part 1. There is also a Part 2 with Roger Goodell. Roger Goodell, who doesn't believe in freedom of speech and freedom of protest. Very, very interesting. And then let me remove me so you can see this one. Oh, why am I still there? I'm still there. Nope, still there. Oh, here we go. Seeing Color with Chip and Joanna Gaines, plus kids. Uncomfortable Conversations. But there's no... Okay. You know what? I guess the color was Emmanuel in that video. And just because he could not leave out the fact that there was literally no interviews with focusing on primarily Black people, he decided to interview Lil Wayne. Out of all the Black people to finally highlight on your channel, it was Lil Wayne. Lil Wayne, who let us all down when he decided to take this picture. Lord. Okay. And in terms of Black creators having large white audience, and particularly having the white audience is one thing, catering specifically to the white audience is another thing. When your comment section is filled with, I'm obsessed with how well spoken you are and how you get your message across, it's a problem. You have people in here committing aggressions against you, but it's fine because you let them be unconsciously racist. Which, shout out to Gina for pushing back and said, why wouldn't he be well spoken? This is a really long ass comment, which we're not going to get into this whole comment, but it's a mess. So we'll just paraphrase. Thank you so much for what you are doing here. Episode 2 showed up in my feed and I watched it just because the name of the series was so interesting to me. After watching the episode, I proceeded to watch all the following episodes and then I ended with the first episode. As a white man, I have gone through several phases in my life, and while I never thought of myself as a racist, I understand now that many of my thoughts, beliefs, and actions were in fact a part of the problem. I have been going through a period of personal growth over the last 6 to 7 years, and as a reformed ex-conservative Republican, I'm glad that he is turning his life around. I am deeply ashamed, however, it's not turning around fast enough. I am deeply ashamed that in my life, albeit unintentionally, here we go with unconscious, unintentional, I would suggest that collective whiteness, because again, it's not all white people. It's a majority though. Remove that from your verbiage when talking about Black people. It's not unintentional, honey. The first time that you can accept that you did it on purpose, you can lead to change. Unintentionally been a misogynist, a sexist, a homophobe, and a racist. Whoa, he was a lot of things unintentionally. Wow. I'm one of those people who has never said things like, I'm one of those people who has said things like he is so well spoken for a Black man. Oh, like his other commenter just did. Or she is so pretty for a Black woman. I have even crossed the street when faced with a group of young Black men. Wow. And I bet you it was broad daylight. I know that I have a long way to go because I still, as yet, do not know all the unconscious, here we go again, because y'all done gave them this verbiage, prejudices I still feel, but I am trying to continue to change and grow. Keep up the good work. I am counting on you and others like you to help people like me be better than we are. Labor, 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 labor. Get to work, Negroes. Get to work. Because all we're going to do is more labor. And freedom is not coming if we continue this foolishness. Nonsense. All right. We also won't read this whole one either. This is also another older white man. I felt hopeless until I began seeing youth of all colors, black and white, rising in peaceful protest, arm in arm. We can and must make a difference today to end oppression and unite as one people for a better future. I agree that for all lives to matter, the Black Lives Matter movement must be embraced by all who care about the dignity of a mother's child, any mother's child. What shall I do? All that I can and I must, whatever that takes, God grant me the wisdom to learn, the conviction to act, the strength to overcome, and the time to make a difference. I think it's really interesting in going through so many of the comments. You hear the word unconscious, unintentional. Well, that's okay. Let's skip over the part where we need to actually give Black American people reparations in this place. Let's skip over that part. We're just going to get to the kumbaya. When we get to the kumbaya, I'm so happy to see Black and white people together. Kumbaya, kumbaya, kumbaya. Kumbaya doesn't occur until you address the systemic issues in this place and redress the issues, which is not going to happen until we actually talk about reparations. Reparations for each section of Black people from their respective colonizer. It is not going to happen. We cannot get to hold hands, kumbaya. Let's pretend everything is A-okay. We're not suffering. Let's pretend like the Black maternal mortality rate is not sky high, 3 times more likely to die as a Black woman if you give birth than a white woman. We can't pretend that any of that is going away if we just want to skip over and pretend we're having uncomfortable conversations. If telling a white woman that she can have braids as long as she cites the sources is an uncomfortable conversation, I'm just a little bit bewildered. I'm a little bit bewildered as to what an actual uncomfortable conversation is in his mind. I'm a little bit bewildered, to be honest. I'm a little bit out of a loss for words. Because an uncomfortable conversation would have been the conversation he had with Van, which was a Black American man from Louisiana, from Baton Rouge, telling him, it's highly problematic that you're trying to separate yourself from descendants of slaves by saying, oh, I don't have that level of trauma, so therefore I can be nicer to white people and they will receive me. Because the issue is not that white people want to systemically oppress all types of Black people, no matter what type of Black you are in this place. The issue is the approach, in Emmanuel's opinion. An uncomfortable conversation would have been him getting to the root of why does he feel that way? Why does he consistently say Black, Nigerian, and white? Get to the root of it. Who in your family said it to you? It's okay. Let's have an uncomfortable conversation. If I wanted to out them, which I'm not going to, because I love my family and they've gotten a lot better, I could name on my hand which ones are saying trifling shit and which ones we go toe in toe every other business day about it. That's how you grow and have an actual conversation, actually make change, instead of being like, well, you catch more flies with honey. Also, shit catches flies. What is the difference? The fly was caught. All right. I think this part is important because he offended a lot of the Nigerians and the Nigerian Americans, rightfully so, by saying he didn't have generational trauma as a Nigerian. And the conversation that I had, which is on Patreon now, with Grace, discussing the harm that first-generation immigrants cause both to Black Americans as well as our parents' countries, is very pertinent to this conversation. Because when you have subsets of Black immigrants that come to this place and largely are very proud, there's nothing wrong with being proud. There's a Jamaican flag in my bio. I'm going to be a Yardy's Yardy till the day I die. I'm very proud of it. But when you have people that come over and are proud and don't learn anything about the place they're in, distance themselves, but then simultaneously, for some odd reason, don't know anything about the country their parents came from, it creates a very interesting set of commotion. Because again, most Black immigrants, when are referencing the country of origin in this manner, this specific manner that Emmanuel chooses to do it, is to separate himself from being a Black American. That's the only reason why he's doing it. That's the only reason why it comes up. He literally says, oh, well, because I can say things in a different way because of this. And it also creates this very false and harmful narrative that all of these countries that collectively we Black immigrants, both also refugees, come from, that everything is copacetic, everything is great, which is a lie. We did a live, I don't know, we have this diaspora conversation many times, and we're going to continue to have it. It's something that I think we should continue to have. However, the last time we had this conversation, maybe like 6 months ago, 7 months ago, I can't remember, somebody commented and was like, oh, because Jamaica doesn't have slavery. To which, honestly, if I could have come out of my face into the computer and slapped them, it probably would have happened. And this is the problem when people get over here, they act too, their chest is too high and they act a fool, then people, obviously, why would anybody, for what it's worth? I understand that in America, education is not great. I've grown up here. I'm from Miami. I know all of that. America actively chooses to not teach Black American history. What do you think America is doing with the rest of African history? Not teaching it, obviously. People have no context usually unless you tell them or they've learned by themselves. So now we have this false narrative that, oh, these rich Black immigrants are coming over here, taking everything. They are acting a fool. They're separating themselves. I'm like, wait. Jamaica is a glorified plantation. Jamaica is full of resorts that are not owned by Jamaicans. The largest resort system is Sandals Resort, and it's owned by a white Jamaican. And that's all I'm going to say about that right now, because I owe y'all a video about that. And it is wildly uncomfortable. If you've ever been to a resort in Jamaica, they do not pay those people that much money. So I highly recommend. My cousin recently got married. She wanted to get married back home. So we went to Jamaica. And I made sure I packed $200 cash to tip the people. Because they don't pay them that much money, it's trifling, and people think because sometimes, we're not saying like, oh, hey, it's rough back home. Obviously, it's rough. That's why our parents are over here. So people are thinking like, oh, everything is so copacetic over there. Everything is great. Y'all don't have any issues. That's why y'all are causing havoc. No. It's rough. It's rough life all around. So with that, I thought it would be necessary that we specifically talk about the generational trauma throughout the diaspora. And we're not going to touch on all the countries, to be honest, because we don't have the time. And I don't have the knowledge, to be honest. So we're going to touch on some of it, particularly in how it pertains to Emmanuel. And then I have a documentary recommendation in regards to the things that have gone on in Jamaica are indicative of what is going on in most of the Caribbean as well. So Van said, because they then proceed to get into a Twitter argument, of course, because Van was upset. Everybody was upset, rightfully. And Emmanuel was not backing down from deciding that he wanted to be the honey in white people's lives. So Emmanuel Acho, he added him, I'm not sure what you intended to convey by stating your Nigerian background frees you from generational trauma and takes the sting out of your convos with white people, but it feels like you purposely othered yourself from the descendants of slaves. Why? To which Emmanuel said, which mind you, we've already played it, so you heard him do it. I made no such suggestion. Yes, he did. Yes, he did. He verbatim said that. He verbatim said because he knows where his parents are from, that it allows him to be a conduit and be the middle ground and take the sting out of the delivery to white people. That's literally what he said. So I think this is interesting. That was the reach the host of the show made and led the listener to at the 94:45 mark. It wasn't a reach. He said this verbatim himself. I stated my lineage to allow understanding for my predisposition to be less hostile. This is problematic language. Less hostile. It was giving the listener insight as to why, not implying I'm better. Saying that you are less hostile because you are a Black immigrant is implying that you think Black American people are hostile. Anybody with a basic grasp of the English language knows that. And he has more than a basic grasp of the English language. He knows what he's doing. He knows that he implied to his followers, see, that is an angry Black man. I am a honeyed Black man, and you are safe with me. Remember, Nana, you can write me your emails, and Rebecca, let me know how your scalp is doing. I'll send you some Miel Organics. What are the girls? Rosemary in your hair, because that's what the girls are putting in their hair now. That's a different conversation. And everything is going to be fine over here. It causes more division. And to be honest, the diaspora war is going to continue until we get to the root of having these conversations and stopping the behavior. And today, Emmanuel Acho, just for today, is largely fueling this diaspora war. It's unnecessary because most people in real life, has been my experience, are much more understanding than this and not so completely. I don't even think it's tone deaf. I think he's doing it on purpose. I refuse to believe that he's dumb. I refuse to believe it. He doesn't think he's dumb, so I'm not going to think he's dumb. Which is why I think it's a grift. If you are saying these things and you're saying it with your whole chest, okay, you're not stupid, so then it's a grift. You're doing it on purpose. You're doing it on purpose to sell books, get YouTube views, etc. Win an Emmy. He won an Emmy for that series, which, you know what? Interesting. So with that, let us start with the first generational trauma, as rightfully called out by some Nigerian Americans. Van is consistently on a first-gen Nigerian saying we don't have generational trauma when we speak English. This young woman is also Nigerian. When we speak English as a first language, parents attended colonial schools. It was literally called colonial school. Independent, less than 65 years, richest, most populous African nation, yet most people are poor back home. Colonization has traumatized everyone. Saying that you don't have any trauma is wild to me. And then Antoinette and her Hanifa, I see her in the Hanifa looking cute. All of that, plus so many of us first gens having parents, grandparents, relatives who are directly impacted by Biafra. Abeg, make it make sense. And that was largely the question, as in, it is likely, he's born in 1990, so he is the same age, around the same age as me, around the same age as my friend Grace that we interviewed, and she was talking about Biafra and particularly how there are a section of Nigerian immigrants, Igbo immigrants specifically, that are refugees, that her and her family were refugees. It is likely and probable, I'm not sure, I didn't look into his background, that it is a possibility that his parents were also refugees from Biafra. And he's out here, we don't got no generational trauma, child. Everything is fine. I go back to the village and everything is fine. No, tell the truth. Tell the truth how colonization has ruined and rampaged through Nigeria. That's the only way we are going to get to collective wholeness. And this is his Twitter, which his new book coming out is Illogical, which it's just ironic and funny to me. But I do see here the Nigerian flag and the American flag. And I think if you are going to put up your parents' country's flag, at least do them the decency to know the history of the blasted country. Do them the decency to at least know the history of the country. Because it's so disrespectful to immigrate to this place, no matter if you have a decent amount of money or if you don't have anything, it's hard. Immigration office is not nice. My grandmother was telling me when my parents have like two very different immigration stories. They both came here when they were in their late teens, like high school. They met in high school. And my grandmother, when she immigrated, my mom's mom, she came first. She worked for 3 years, slept on people's couch. Typical Jamaican thing was a nurse aide, all these things, saved up enough money and went down. That was back in the late 80s, went down to immigration office and was like, oh, you told me I need this amount of money. I have the money. Can I get my kids now? She had 5 kids and then my grandpa. To which the immigration officer told them, oh, no, it's different now. So we can only get your husband. So my grandma flipped out on them and was like, I've been in here every month for the past 3 years. You told me it cost X amount of money. I busted my ass. This is the money. I don't want my husband. I want my kids and my husband. And it was such a struggle for her. And then they finally came over. And then my dad's story is very different, where he immigrated at 17. He wanted to come to America. I was like, I heard all about America. I'm going to come. And he had family up here, lived with family. None of immigration is easy. So it is extremely disrespectful, in my opinion, when I see the children of Black immigrants have no respect for the country their parents came from, have no desire to do anything besides show off pictures when you go home for Christmas. You're like, oh, you see, we have money. I meant to include a video from Shayo, who's like one of my favorite Instagrammers. She does the poetry, she's hilarious. She's from the UK, where she did a video which she was showing. She's like, why? She's Nigerian. She's like, why when we go back home, why are we all showing like, oh, look at my compound, look how nice it is. Whose gaze is that for? Whose gaze is it for to be like, see, we have money, it's not a village. It would behoove us, all of us, to show, nah, wanna mash up the place. Jamaica's mashed up because England mashed it up. That's it. That's it. And so with that, I figured we would do a brief segue into the Biafran War, remembering Nigeria's Biafra War, which this ironically is on BBC, but this is written by a Nigerian. So that's why I pulled that source. So the death of more than 1 million people. This is a large scale war and a large scale atrocity that happened in Nigeria to people. So to simply erase it is doing such a disservice, not only to the country and to the people harmed, but to your parents. It's wild. It's after they sacrificed and done so much to just disrespect them in that manner. No, it couldn't be my child. It couldn't be my child. The deaths of more than 1 million people in Nigeria as a result of the brutal civil war, which ended exactly 50 years ago, are a scar on the nation's history. For most Nigerians, the war over the breakaway state of Biafra is generally regarded as an unfortunate episode best forgotten. But for the Igbo people who fought for secession, it remains a life-defining event. It should be important. It should be noted, which I realize we're at 55 minutes, so we need to wrap this up. But it should be noted that the scramble for Africa, which occurred in the 1800s, largely separated the continent and placed people from different tribes together that didn't necessarily get along. And that's putting it in a very nice way. AKA white people in Europe plundered all of Africa and was like, yeah, whatever, Igbo, Yoruba, Hausa, okay, fine. Together, you, Habasha, over there, Eritrea, Ethiopia together, whatever, this together, and jumbled up the place. And so the Biafra War was a direct result of Igbo people being like, yeah, we deserve our own country. We deserve sovereignty, and we'll be over here. In 1967, following 2 coups and turmoil, which led to about 1 million Igbos returning to the southeast of Nigeria, the Republic of Biafra seceded with 33-year-old military officer Emeka, which I apologize, let me say it slow, Odumegwu, at the helm. I have to practice that. The Nigerian government declared war, and it's important to know the Nigerian government declared war with the backing of who? With the backing of England. Declared war after 30 months of fighting, Biafra surrendered on 15th of January 1970. The conflict officially ended. The government's policy of no victor, no vanquished may have led to a lack of official reflection, but many Nigerians of Igbo origin grew up on stories from people who lived through the war. So it's very sad. And I think in terms of if we're drawing correlations, which is we all have so much more in common than we don't, the attack now on Black American history has been going on in America for decades. It is the same attack on global Black history to begin with. There is a clip from Burna Boy, which all these clips I should have put in here. A clip from Burna Boy, which he's being interviewed and he states, we only learned about you. It was a white interviewer interviewing him. And he's like, we only learned about you in Nigeria. He's like, we don't learn Nigerian history. He's like, I didn't learn a lot about Nigeria. I learned about the Queen of England. We learned about Lizzie. I know way too much as somebody who's gone through the Miami-Dade education system about King Henry VIII than I had to teach myself in my big age about Norman Manley. Why? Who cares about King Henry VIII and his damn wives? We know way too much about all of these things. And this is a prime example of when we are unable to advocate and to successfully center each other. The only way we're getting free is you center Black people, which is why I think coddling white people and centering white people in discourses about race is not only problematic, it's foolish, and it's violent. The only way that we actually learn about each other and ourselves is by centering Black people, is by centering like, hey, this is what happened in our country. This is what's currently happening to us. This is what's going to continue to happen unless we understand. So this is a documentary, which shout out to Aunt Judy for sending this to me. I watched this a couple weeks ago and I put this on Instagram as well. It's called Life in Debt. And it basically chronicles how Jamaica was purposely crippled by the IMF, the International Monetary Fund. And essentially, colonization has not ended for the majority, if not all, of the Black countries. The only Black country that never was colonized, God bless them, is Ethiopia. That is the only one. That is the only one that escaped colonization. All of the rest of us are living a struggle life. So in Life in Debt, it chronicles why Jamaica doesn't have many industries in terms like agricultural industries that it used to have. So dairy farming, banana farming, Jamaicans used to actually eat things grown on Jamaica. It's largely imported now from the US. And it is because the US swooped in and was like, you know what? Our dairy farmers aren't really doing great. We need to sell off this powdered milk, give it to those Black people over there. Undercut the dairy industry where Jamaicans are drinking cow milk from Jamaican cows in Jamaica, which should be the cheapest, should be the most healthy for you. Oh, give them this powder because that's what they need. And then the IMF swooped in, saddled Jamaica with a bunch of debt that Jamaica will never be able to repay. Unless Jamaica gets reparations from England, it's not happening. And it is a vicious cycle. The IMF keeps giving the debt because Jamaica will crash as a country. We have largely not left the plantation. And similar things can be said about Nigeria. Similar things can be said about the Bahamas. The Bahamas is completely a resort. It is very sad. A deforested resort at that. It is when I went to the Bahamas is the most sad, to be honest, in my spirit I felt as a Caribbean person going to a Caribbean country. Food is great. Food is great. But if you've been to the rest of the Caribbean and been like actually into where my family's from, St. Thomas Parish, is the bush. You run around and you see what rural Caribbean, what actual flora and fauna looks like. You go to the Bahamas, it's just shocking. The deforestation of the place is absolutely shocking. It's been deforested. It's been rebuilt in this image to, oh, look, there are these tall ass coconut trees with no coconut on them. What kind of coconut tree is this? Weird. It's very strange. It's very strange. And largely, this continues to go on. So I know we're like way over time. Sorry. I wanted to go through a little bit of how the demographics of Black immigrants in the United States and how, of course, I'm a firm believer that we have a lot more similarities. But even with these similarities, we need to hold each other to task better, to be honest. And I think this is part of it. It's uncomfortable and it's fine. So in terms of, I think now, because a lot of what the US is doing and what sadly I see some Black people doing as well, which is overestimate the size of the immigrant population. Because America, particularly the MAGA version of America, the immigrants are coming, they're taking everything, they're doing everything, causing fake panic in people that is not really there. So here are the actual numbers. So the number of Black immigrants living in this country reached 4.6 million in 2019. That's not that many. Okay, up from roughly 800,000 in 1980. This increase accounted for 19% of the growth in the overall Black population, which increased by 20 million during the same period. So overall, I believe totally together, we are around 33 million Black people in this country, with only 4 million being Black immigrants. And this influx of Black immigrants is largely due to all of the hard work of Black Americans and the few at the time Caribbean immigrants that were here, which was the Civil Rights Act. The Civil Rights Act of 1964 led to the Immigration and Nationality Act of 1965, which allowed Black people to finally immigrate to the United States. Before, there were Caribbean immigrants trickling in, but essentially it was on a quota system. It was on a quota system, and back then, most of the Caribbean countries weren't even independent yet. They were still under rule by either England or France. Haiti is the only one that's been independent for 200 years. So they were only allowed about 100 a year. And then after that, they uprooted the quota system. So largely Asian Americans as well as Black immigrants, the only reason why we're even allowed in this place is because Black American people advocated that it is racist to have these quota systems, which should be noted and can never be said enough times because people largely forget, child. People largely forget. So here are the exact numbers. So Jamaicans are still the largest Black immigrant population. So in 2019, there were 760,000 of us. Haiti is a close number 2 at 700,000. Largest Haitian population is in Miami. And it should be noted that, again, all refugees are immigrants, but not all immigrants are refugees. So there are some Black refugees which are being treated worse than anybody else because you're coming over here destitute, impoverished, hungry, you don't have any money, and people are treating you like an outsider, treating you bad. I didn't want to show the picture, I don't want to traumatize anybody, but we all hopefully remember what they did at the Border Patrol in Texas to the Haitian immigrants. They're out here whipping people like people on a plantation on a horse. Wild behavior. Black immigrants are also the most likely to get deported. So Haiti and Jamaica account for 31% of the US Black immigrant population. And then it's followed by Nigeria and then Ethiopia. All right, so because it's Black History Month, and you know what, to be honest, more so when we have these conversations, I think in trying to course correct the issue of like, hey, let's call the foolishness to task, sometimes the Pan-African love and collective struggle gets lost in it. So I figured, why not highlight some people really quick? All right. Particularly, these are all going to be people who helped with the civil rights era and a little bit before the civil rights era. So these are all going to be Caribbean immigrants. So of course, on the left, I think your left is still my left, you have MLK. And on the right, you have Stokely Carmichael. Stokely Carmichael is, what does that have to do with anything? People need to relax. Stokely Carmichael is Trini, born in Trinidad. All right, then you have Claude McKay. So Claude McKay was Jamaican. He was born, he moved to New York in 1914, where he became a key figure in the Harlem Renaissance of Black artists. He was a famous poet in the 20s and 30s. In this period, McKay joined the industrial workers of the world and also became involved with a group of Black radicals who were unhappy both with Marcus Garvey's nationalism and the middle-class reformist NAACP. Together, they founded the semi-secret revolutionary organization, the African Blood Brotherhood. So we can have Pan-African unity up in this place. Also, I love when other Jamaicans finally came to the point and realized Marcus Garvey was, it wasn't going to work. It wasn't going to work. And then, largely forgotten, these are some of the descendants of Caribbean immigrants who went on to do great things. Malcolm X, his mother was from Grenada. Then you have Shirley Chisholm all the way on the right. Her one parent was from Barbados. And then the other one, I think is USV. I can't remember. But she was, she largely, I guess, grew up with the Bayesian parent. So she largely identified as a Bayesian American. And then in the middle, God rest her soul, Cicely Tyson. Both of her parents were from Nevis. All right, so I had a whole section on how diversity and inclusion is a scam. I guess we're not that far over. We can do it. I think large part of what allows someone like an Emmanuel Acho to have these large platforms, these voices, this I can speak to white people using honey, is the rise of diversity and inclusion. And this is coming from somebody who, remember, full-time worked in DEI for 6 months, because I was convinced that I too was an exceptional Negro and I could do it. I could hold them to task. That is hubris and foolishness. That is hubris and foolishness. And I'm happy to eat my humble pie and say that it is hubris and nonsense to think that one Black person of any nationality is going to hold large swaths of white people to task. At best, or at worst, that one Black person is just going to coddle them into doing the right thing. That is not how this is going to work. That is not how this is going to work. All right. Let us play this. Hopefully this plays. I think I said it right. Okay. This is from which it says 5 months ago. And I'm like, wow, it's only been 5 months. I think it's been 6 months. Yes, this is an important fact because people are always getting this wrong. Speaking of Pan-Africanism, the Juneteenth colors are red, white, and blue, not red, green, and black. Yes, they're red, white, and blue, designed partially after the Haitian flag. See? The first free Black country in the Western Hemisphere. All right. Let's play this. Okay, is it going? When I was hired, the company did not interview anyone for the department head role. They instead decided to slate in one of the executives in the marketing department. Let me say this again for you as to the root of where I knew this was going to go left. One of the executives in the marketing department with no experience was put in charge of a brand new diversity, equity, inclusion function. What are we going to do? Market away racism? Yeah. So that is strike one on me, because I assumed that maybe this person would defer to me since I had experience. For context, working in tech for 6 years, I built out 3 full DEI programs for free at the tech companies I worked at because they were cheap. They were cheap, and because I cared, and because honestly, I don't like people talking to me crazy or talking to other Black and brown people crazy. So I did it. And I figured, you know what? I have the energy. I have the chutzpah. This is the hubris right here, loud. It'll be fine. I will tell this person, here are the boundaries. You know, you don't have any experience. We're acknowledging that. That's fine. You seem lovely, but no. Problem number 1, these trainings, which I was not allowed to lead. They hired somebody else to lead, which honestly, thank God, because I'm not going to fake the funk. It's not in me. The company running diversity inclusion trainings, specifically insisting on not mentioning the word racism. How are you going to run a diversity and inclusion training and not mention the word racism? Because, end quote, mentions of the words racism, homophobia, and transphobia cause friction. And when there's friction, we can't get the work done. Wow! Who knew racism caused friction? I think one of the funniest things that should not have been funny, and I shouldn't have laughed, and I laughed because I was like, y'all are lost, and I cannot help you, was when I brought up the fact that multiple people were complaining that these trainings, these trainings are very vague. We're not mentioning racism, transphobia, homophobia. How are we going to nip the issues in the bud? Because people are experiencing aggressions. I hate the word microaggressions. No, it's an aggression. It's nothing small about it. You have ruined my day with your bullshit. My former boss feedback was, well, maybe we can send them a podcast list. A podcast list on racism. You want to send Black and brown people a podcast list on racism as if Black and brown people are not aware of what? And for context, because I'm sure the question is, what is that person's racial background? They are East Asian. And that is a loaded, nuanced conversation for another day, but also is why I vehemently do not agree with the blanket term POC. We're not all experiencing America the same. We're not. All right. So that ended with me getting fired, by the way, which I didn't put that part in because it's in the beginning of the video. That ended with me getting fired. Specifically was told numerous times, Stephanie, you can't just advocate for Black people. And I was like, well, actually, if we're being correct, I've been advocating for Black and Hispanic people because that is who gets treated the worst in tech and up in here. But okay. And it was so interesting to me because, again, as you can see, and I'm happy to admit it now, the hubris is similar to Emmanuel, but different in that I was like, oh, I'm going to say what I want to say. I'm going to say what I want to say and do what I wanted to do, and I'm going to make them act right. Versus Emmanuel is very much like, I'm just going to coddle them and then they're going to do it. Neither work. Both are different sides of the same coin of individual people, either well-meaning or grifting, thinking, I am just going to do it by myself. We are not going to tackle systemic issues with one corporate Negro. It's not going to happen. And I know now that I think it's been 7 months. I don't know why the video says 5 months. Maybe it took me a while to film it. This was in July. So now that so much time has passed, I'm fine to admit, why did I think that I was just going to come up in there and they were going to listen to me? It's kind of funny. It's kind of funny, but it also shows like how this goes wrong and why diversity and inclusion, it is now a sector. It is an industry. It is 80% run by white women. And I think that should be noted because I know some very good, well-meaning people who are like, no, Stephanie, I believe in it. And I'm like, okay, you're going to believe in it and it's going to stress you out because it's not believing in you. It's not going to work. Diversity and inclusion without anti-racism work is not going to work. It's not going to work. Diversity and inclusion without pushing for laws such as the Crown Act, which protect Black people of all genders from being allowed to wear their natural hair at work. The fact that we need a law in place, because people are so used to discriminating against locks, against natural hair of all textures, particularly against any type of 4A, 4B, 4C hair. They're okay with the threes these days. In the late 2010s, all of a sudden they became a little bit okay with it. They say things, but it's a little bit right. Once you hit 4, people are just act a fool. People act a plumb fool. And it's really interesting that it's so pervasive, this diversity and inclusion language, that I was watching 1619 Project. And we talked about this on Instagram. And it's excellent. It's very well done. It is the original New York Times project by Dr. Hannah Nicole Jones. And it's just a visual version. I think it's really well done. I really like it. But there are some missteps, particularly in episode 2, the race episode. I had some questions. And there are some sections where they are talking about how Black women are treated so awfully in the healthcare system in the United States. It is literally an epidemic of how Black women do not receive proper care, particularly when you are giving birth. And they interviewed this woman who, unfortunately, she lost her child because her white doctor was like, oh, nothing's wrong with you. Nothing's wrong with you. You're fine. She's like, I think I'm high risk. Like, shouldn't you be checking on me? And the language used by, again, a very smart, well-meaning Black doctor was, we have to educate the rest of the medical field about their unconscious bias with Black people. It's not unconscious. It wasn't unconscious when the field of gynecology was literally created by testing, and this is me saying it very PG because I don't want to ruin y'all's day, but by testing without anesthesiology different procedures on enslaved Black American women. It wasn't unconscious. It was purposeful. It was evil. It was malevolent. A lot of times people forget that Serena Williams, which it's stuck in my head and I bring it up every once in a while. Serena Williams almost died giving birth to her daughter. And Beyonce also had complications. These are the most celebrated, the most well-known, the most beloved Black women in America. You're telling me it was unconscious that the nurses and the doctors in charge of the two of them were just like, didn't realize. Wouldn't a nurse or a doctor have a celebrity client? This is wrong. They should treat everybody the same. But wouldn't they treat a celebrity client better? Or they purposely chose, because they were Black, to be negligent, if we want to give them any leeway. And that largely is why I have personally done a full 180 with DEI. And, I feel kind of bad because it's alienated some of like my former coworkers. They're like, oh, well, and I'm like, do what you want to do. Do what you want to do. But we are not getting to liberation by centering whiteness and white feelings and saying everything is unintentional, unconscious, and unknowing. We're not. We have too many books. People have done too much work and too much labor for us to really go and keep on this path. All right. Let us wrap this up. Now, we kind of covered this earlier, but I wanted to point this out because this is going worldwide, but specifically this is happening in the United States, in Florida, because Florida will Florida. DeSantis, the governor of Florida, decided, which it should be noted that the course on Black history, Black American history, was an AP course. AP course, you have to be an exceptional student to get in the course. It should be noted because we covered it ages ago. I don't remember when. I literally went through the school curriculum. There's a video on critical race theory, the misunderstandings of critical race theory, or something like that. Critical race theory in this country, what people are saying in CRT, has nothing to do with critical race theory. Critical race theory is taught in law schools. It's taught in law schools and higher graduate level courses. Critical race theory, they are using that as a dog whistle for Black history. That's all they're doing. They want to erase the little bit of Black history that is taught in school. It is not currently on the Miami-Dade curriculum to teach any type of Black history in most of the grades. It is not. It is on many current curriculums not to teach Black history at all. AP history would be one of the few ways which students are able to actually get a holistic understanding of Black history because it is not taught in the school in the first place. So the College Board, basically you take a test at the end of your AP class, and if you get a certain level on the test, I had AP years ago when I was in high school, then you get college credits. That's essentially how it works. So the College Board runs it, and essentially they decided, okay, we're just going to update the final curriculum, and they removed, these are the things that they decided to remove, the Black Lives Matter movement. They just removed it. How are you going to? Okay. Reparations for slavery. To me, this is the biggest slap in the face to remove this. And this is showing what all this is about. All this has to do with the fact they don't want to teach people history because they do not want to give Black American people reparations. They will do anything they can to not make good on their promise of 40 acres and a mule. Intersectionality was removed, and other key components of many college level history courses. They removed any mention of James Baldwin. How are you going to teach modern Black history without talking about James Baldwin? How? What are you teaching the kids? Nothing. Foolishness. And on that note, I do think it is up to us to be kindly louder. Hopefully this was somewhat kind. Maybe not. Oh, well. And push back when people, particularly Black people, decide to, upon themselves, to do harmful things against other Black people. Saying that you want to take the sting out of having racial discourse, how are you going to take the sting out of chattel slavery? That's not possible. How are you going to take the sting out of Jim Crow? How are you going to take the sting out of the school to prison pipeline? How are we taking the sting out of gentrification? People are literally getting displaced by the minute in Brooklyn, by the minute. And yes, I'm not going to lie. Every time I see a gentrifier in my building, I give them a nasty face. That is the least I can do. It has been very wild living in Brooklyn, watching my literal older neighbors, 70s, 80 years old, get notices on their doors. You can see the notice. The landlord does not care. They put it on the door. You see that they've been in the building for years. Some of them are paying, honestly, I saw one the other day, they were paying $700. $700 rent. That means they've been in here for at least 15 years. They're in their 70s. They're pushing them out. So that way they change their $700 rent. They can get a nice yuppie couple in there for $3,000. How are we going to take the sting out of displacing our elderly? How are we taking the sting out of any of that? It's disgusting. It's dehumanizing, and it is a new form of colonization, to be honest. Because then people move into the neighborhood, complain about the people in said neighborhood until the neighborhood has removed all the people that are now considered undesirable. Sad. Sad. So I don't have anything positive to end this with, which is I hope that he just fades into the black. Like, sir, please just leave it alone. Like, you should have enough money, budget your money wisely, and enough. Let us get to collective liberation on our own without the shucking and jiving, please. So let's go through some comments. Exactly this. There are literal laws in Germany that force people to learn about the history, because if you don't learn about the history, you are bound to repeat it. But to be honest, in America, it's not even so much learning about the history because of continuation. History is occurring every day. Every day foolishness is going on. Everyday nonsense. All right, let's go through. I was trying to read some of the comments as we were going along. We'll do like 10 minutes of comments. I kept y'all so long. I know y'all have to have dinner. All right, let's try halfway. So I did mean to say with this, I will say whenever we have like conversations about Black immigrants, is because a prominent Black immigrant has acted a fool. And as a Black immigrant, I feel like it's necessary to have these conversations and be like, yo, there are deep-rooted issues in our varying communities because they're not homogenous as to why this keeps occurring. And also, I think if you particularly belong to that community, it is kind of your responsibility to push back with the people you know, because these things are not happening in a vacuum. These things are not happening in a vacuum. All right. I see we have a lot to. So if you just tuned in, scroll to the beginning, and You're just gonna see forehead and comments. Oh, thank you. Don't forget to like and subscribe. It's exactly this. The only uncomfortable conversation he is still triggered from. It could have been a great way for him to be honest. I think a lot of people don't like to admit when they're wrong, but I think admitting when you're wrong proves that you're not a grifter. It's like, you know what? I just thought really highly of myself. I thought like this was going to work. And you know what? It didn't work. I apologize. It could have been a great learning lesson, but no, nope. Galen, what does it mean to cite sources for braids? Is the woman going to wear a label on her head? Child. I just have so many. This is a good question. And I didn't want her to catch a stray, but I should have put the clip in here of Yvonne's comedy special where she also made the same comment of, I was with a group of Nigerian friends in a comedy special. I think this is what she says. I'm paraphrasing. I was with a group of Nigerians and this black man, as in separation from black and Nigerian. I'm like, what is happening? What is happening? Yes, kumbaya. Shout out to the Gullah and the Geechee. Yes. I was like, we gotta stop the foolishness. Listen, I keep my my violence to myself because I'm very much team. If you don't listen, you must feel. Because some people they don't listen. But I'm not going to encourage y'all to do that. But in my personal life, here's what it is. Yes, they did. And that made me happy. And that shows the Diaspora linked up and dragged him by his tight tees, snug pants, and tap shoes. And that should show that we can collectively get to collective liberation for each of our individual groups and together. Because most people, I didn't see that many people defending him. I saw a few, but I didn't see that many black people defending him. I saw a lot of white people. So most black people were like, come on, man, stop the foolishness. So, yeah. As a Black American, I just wait patiently to support first-generation Black folks when they experience what I do. Sad face. Sometimes they just have to experience it. And this is a good point, and I forgot to put up that statistic, which is statistically, by the second generation, Black immigrants are fully assimilated into America, into Black American culture. And so all of the statistics showing that Black immigrants generally have a little bit of higher net worth, those evaporate by second generation. And largely it's due to the fact that America is racist. You cannot special Negro your way out of the systemic issue that America is a racist place. And America is racist because it is foundationally built upon the free labor of chattel slavery. And America has largely reiterated that throughout the years. Victoria's Secret got in trouble maybe 5 years ago because they had incarcerated people making panties and then selling people panties for $30 and paying incarcerated people 1 penny. Slavery has just changed forms. All right. Oh, thank you. It's this. KY coconuts. My Bayesian grandma worked on a plantation. It's this. Most of our families have and still live either in proximity to the resort system or work in the resort system. And the resort system is just a bona fide plantation. Oh. Yes, exactly. Unfortunately, in the Caribbean, the history is not taught completely. Why did I learn about the Barbados slave code after leaving Barbados? It's very wild. And also in terms of like generational trauma, one thing that I noticed, and we were joking about it, I was joking with somebody about it on Instagram because it was so normalized between Caribbean people, particularly Jamaicans. I think all Caribbean people do it. But which is the average lifespan of an enslaved African in the Caribbean was 7 years. Death came for all of them, was hard labor. And also the plantation owners, most of who were British aristocrats who never even saw the plantation, half of them, they just took all the money from it, were so evil, they were just murdering off the people, just working them to the death. So any Caribbean person over the age of 50, you call them, you tell them, oh, tomorrow, let's go to lunch, Dad. God willing, if I'm not dead. What? It's tomorrow. Call your grandmother. Grandma, oh, I'm coming home to visit in 2 weeks. All right, Lord willing, I see if I'm not dead. I might be in the ground. It's a constant thing. Like the trauma of it, the death is looming at all times. And it's so normalized that we joke about it that I wonder how much of our daily mannerisms as Black people across the diaspora are due to chattel slavery for the majority of us in the West, and then colonization for literally everyone on the continent except for Ethiopia. And honestly, I would say colonization has probably affected Ethiopia as well, because if you're the only one not getting colonized, I don't think you go to bed at night being like, oh, everything's copacetic. It probably leaves a little residue there of like, oh my God, they're coming for us next. All right. Is this exactly? I wish I came in the beginning. He must not know his history on colonization of Nigeria. He must not know, or he must be oblivious to it. But I don't see how you could be in his big age. I'm 31. He's born in 1999. He's 32. Child. Free yourself, Melanie. Free yourself from him. Yes. Exactly. It's exactly this. Jesse Williams, first generation American here, proudly born to 2 West African parents. Salone. Respectfully, he needs to shut the fuck up. He's feeding into the we're better than our American counterparts trope. Exactly. It's a trope, and he's getting Charlemagne is problematic, but it always stuck in my head that because I used to listen to it, I used to drive Donkey of the Day. Like, sir, please, why? All right, let's scroll down to the bottom, and I'll let y'all go. I'm gonna go find some dinner for myself. Tristan, listen, thank you for the super chat. They may have had good intentions with their inclusion buzzword, but Plymouth Rockers will always Plymouth. At first, I was like, Plymouth Rockers, what is this? Listen, I would owe my grandma so much money. That's my grandma's favorite thing to say. If you're not listening, what's feel? I sure got a few taps. She would never admit this. This is the funniest thing. Oh God. Listen. I think what's interesting about this, Acho prides themselves on being the chosen safe Negro in white spaces. Very Herman Cain, Ben Carson. Ben Carson was the heartbreak of my childhood. Clarence Thomas S. Ben Carson was a noted surgeon, first to ever do it in his field. I forgot the specific surgery that he perfected. He was everywhere. Gifted Hands was his book. I would say most if you're in your 30s to 40s, you probably read the book in middle school or high school. I was so like, oh, Ben Carson is my hero, until he full on just turned around and said, oh, we shucking and jiving today. I was like, why? I wanted to be a doctor until I realized like, oh, lab coat's not for me. Can't wear the same thing all day. But also I'm not the best at science, so probably wasn't going to work. But I used to adore Ben Carson. Ben Carson broke all of our hearts when he just said, no, to hell with y'all. To hell with you Blacks. I am a different type of Negro. And to that, it is a shame, because the people that those types of people go so hard for, they don't give a rat's ass about you. You cannot appropriate Negro yourself out of these systemic issues. There have been so many noted Black people, rich, famous, all of these things that throughout the years, every other year it'll come out on the news. I remember there was a professor, I forgot his name, very noted Black professor. His neighbor called the police on him when he couldn't find his keys. The neighbor was like, this black man is breaking in. We are never going to get out of this problem without liberation. There is no nice Negroing your way out of it. I'm never going to forget the way that white people across America dragged Michelle Obama for simply showing her arms. Michelle Obama, double Ivy League. If we're supposed to aspire to all of these monikers of success that we are so, we're doing so great. Double Ivy League, was a lawyer, was a mom, all these things. Dragged her for simply showing her arms. Dragged her because she was black. We can never exceptional Negro our way out of any of this problem. And he's going to learn that the wrong way, the wrong way at a right time. I didn't say that right. It's fine. Who's Henry Louis Gates? Yes. Thank you, Missy. Heartbroken. Ben Carson is an epic charlatan. I too was heartbroken and hoodwinked. I was so sad. I still have that book. I'm not reading it again, but I still have it. Like, what? Like, there was just a collective, like, just shock. Like, I was like, I know that's not Dr. Carson. Not Dr. Carson, my childhood hero, up here acting a plum fool. Whew. Sad. All right. On that note, okay, I think we saw most of it. The chat got, honestly, I didn't look at all of it. The chat got a little spicy, but this was great. Well, hopefully everybody was, hopefully everybody was respectful, spicily respectful. That's fine. I only blocked like one person, so. Ciao. The family going after Benedict Cumberbatch gives me so much joy. I was talking to my friend Chelsea about this. I'm going to let y'all go in 2 seconds, I promise. That I really secretly, actually out loud, I just want them to pop up on a Disney set. I just want them to pop up on him. And also, if I ever get the time and do the research and figure out who decided to terrorize my family, I feel very bad for them. Because I'm going to be real loud about it. Real loud. Oh, this is a great suggestion, Jocelyn. Also, there's a really good book about the sports industry called $40 Million Slaves. This has been on my list for years. I need to finally read it. All right. Okay. It's really, really so sad. It's so sad when you look into the history, all of our collective history of all of us descendants of enslaved people throughout the US, the Caribbean, and South America. People largely forget the largest amount of enslaved people went to Brazil. And they largely, if you ever go to Brazil, I've been to Rio to watch Bolt's last run many years ago. If you go to Rio, the segregation is so apparent. It is so heartbreaking. It is just a wild sight to behold. It's a really wild sight to behold. All right. Well, I will finally let y'all go. I'm just going to read the last few. Listen. Yes. But yes, though. Yes. It will be televised and broadcasted. I feel bad for them. So. Particularly because in our family history, there is there's not another word for it. The R word. It is known and noted. Which I'm like, oh, we're gonna tussle in the street. So yep. All right. Well, I'm leaving y'all to go. Yes, it is very depressing. That's a conversation. That's a conversation there. I will leave y'all. We are going to do, so things coming up. We're going to do the student loan update will be up tomorrow. And then we're going to do our Patreon biweekly live. Probably we'll do that tomorrow too. I need to post that. We have a list for Patreon. So we are going to talk about, we're going to talk about the legal advantages or disadvantages between marriage and common law marriage, because that was something people were interested in. I think that's an interesting topic and something that's missing largely from the conversation about whether or not marriage is actually a good investment for most women in the 21st century. What are the pros and cons if you want to do the common law way? So we're going to get into that because I'm interested in too. I think it's interesting. So yeah, I appreciate y'all, and I will catch y'all tomorrow online. All right. Have a good night.